All right, we need to continue talking about how to write linear equations. We still want to write them in slope-intercept form, but we need to talk about what happens when the slope and the y-intercept are not handed to us on a silver platter, right? So we need to be able to write a linear equation given just the slope and 1 point, and we need to write a linear equation if we're given 2 points. So some different information. First things first, some review for you. Right? What is the slope and the y-intercept for these two equations? Slope for the first one is, right, 1 or 1 over 1. The y-intercept is 9. The slope for the second one is negative 3 over 5. The y-intercept is, 0. Okay? There's a difference between not seeing the coefficient on the x versus not seeing a constant out here at the end. For the slope, if you don't see the coefficient, then that means it's really a 1. Since 1 times x is still just x, we don't write the 1 because it's not necessary. Same thing out here. If you're missing a constant, it's the same as adding 0. Because adding 0 doesn't change anything. That means the y-intercept must have been 0. There's a difference. All right. You must have two things to write the equation of a line. And from last homework, you're probably going to tell me it's the slope and the y-intercept. What is the y-intercept? Well, just a point. Right? So I agree. We have to have a slope and we have to have a point. Now, if it's the y-intercept, then we can plug that into slope-intercept form of the line and just plug the numbers in and you're fine. It's no big deal. But if it's just a point and not the y-intercept, then we have to do a little bit more work. Okay, just a reminder of the slope formula. There it is. Subtract the y's over subtract the x's. All right, so write an equation in slope-intercept form of the line that passes through the given point. Quick, what's the slope? Slope is 3. What's the y-intercept? It's not 5. It's not 2. It's not there, because if you plot the point, 2, 5 is not on the y-intercept. Remember that it's not on the y-axis. Remember the y-intercept tells us where the graph hits the y-axis. That point is not on the y-axis. Okay, as a matter of fact, if you were to shove this over to be on the y-axis, the x-coordinate would actually be 0. So if you're looking for a point, the coordinates of a point, to show you the y-intercept, it would be if the x-coordinate is 0. But that's not going on here. So what do? Well, we reminded you of the slope formula for a reason. In Center Grove High School, we love the slope formula. So what we know is the slope formula, which looks like this. If we plug in the information that we've got, the slope is 3 or 3 over 1. We do have an ordered pair, so an x and a y. So I'm going to plug the 5 in for one of the y's and the 2 in for one of the x's. And I'm not plugging anything in for the other y or x. And that's okay, because if you look back at your last homework, all of our linear equations in slope-intercept form or in any form will always have an x and a y in it. We will talk about why that is at a later time, but your equations need to have an x and a y in it. So we can use the slope formula to plug in the slope and one of the points and be looking at an equation that has an x and a y in it. The only thing we have to do now is get y by itself, isolate the y. We do that by cross-multiplying. We get 1 times y minus 5, which is y minus 5, and then distribute the 3 to get 3x minus 6. Then we add 5 and add 5, and so y is equal to 3x minus 1. That's your equation in slope-intercept form. And so the y-intercept was not 5. As a matter of fact, it was negative 1. And so the point 0, negative 1 would put you on the y-axis and would show you where this graph hits the y-axis. So that's how you write the equation of a line. We're going to use the slope formula. Okay, much the same way here. We have the slope. The slope is negative 1/3. And so we're going to set up the slope formula by plugging in the numbers, but we're only going to plug in one of the points so that we have that x and y in our equation. This becomes plus plus. I'm going to take the negative with the 1. You can take the negative with the 1 or the 3. It's up to you. I'm going to distribute the 3 here and get 3y plus 12. And the negative 1 to negative x plus 3. Now, subtract 12. 3y equals negative x minus 9. And divide through by 3. So you get y is equal to negative 1/3 x minus 3. Okay? Try this one on your own and see how you do. Stop the video and start it back up and check your work. Did you get y equals 3/4 x plus 11/4? I hope you did. Okay. All right. A couple of odd situations here that I want to take you through. What if your slope was 0 and the point that was on your line was 7, negative 8? Well, I'm still going to use the slope formula. The slope is 0. I'm going to go y minus a negative 8 and an x minus 7. Now, I still want to make this slope into the vertical change over the horizontal change. I still want to make it into a fraction, so I'm just going to put it over 1. No problem, right? The weird part comes when you make those, so you got to make those two minuses a plus. The weird part comes when you cross multiply. 1 times y plus 8 is y plus 8. 0, distribute the 0 here and here. 0 times x is 0. Not 0x, not x. X times 0 is just 0. 0 times negative 7 is 0. So now we get y plus 8 equals 0. And you say, well, wait a minute, Mr. Smith, you just said that every linear equation has to have an x and a y in it. I did say that, but the math here says otherwise. 0 times x is 0. The x disappears. That's okay. That happens with our linear equations sometimes. So I'm going to subtract 8, just still get y by itself. And so if your slope is 0, then you're looking at an equation that just has a y in it. And that's just the way it goes. Okay? Same thing if your slope is undefined. Right? We set this up like we have everything else. We take undefined and set it equal to y minus 0 over x minus 3. Right? Now we're going to cross multiply undefined. Well, that doesn't make any sense, right? So actually, let's back up. We've talked a lot about how to get an undefined slope. When you get an undefined slope, that means you're dividing by 0, because we can't do that. Well, what about the vertical change? So if the horizontal change is 0, what about the vertical change? What do we put in there? Well, does it matter? What's 5 divided by 0? Hopefully you're saying undefined. What's 7,227 divided by 0? It's still undefined. The numerator does not matter. So why don't we put a number in the numerator that makes our lives a lot easier, like 1. Now we want to cross multiply. 1 times x minus 3 is x minus 3. 0 times y is 0, not 0y, not y. 0 times y is 0. 0 minus 0, 0 times 0 is 0. So we get 0 minus 0. Hold on, now the y is gone. Yep, that happens sometimes too. So we just isolate the x then, and we get x equals 3. Okay, we'll talk more about why that happens, or try to link this to what we've done previously some other time. But for right now, just follow the math. Okay? All right. You've got one more to give a shot here. So try it out. Stop the video. Start it back up and see how you do. Hey, did you get y equals x minus 1? I hope so. That's what you should come up with. If not, make sure you come find me and we'll go through it. Now, all right, so we got to have a slope. We got to have a point to write the equation of a line, right? Well, what if you don't have a slope? What if you just have 2 points? Well, if you're given 2 points, can you find the slope? You should. That's what one of your first homework was all about. Find the slope. So before we can do this, we've got to go find the slope. So slope is the change in y, so subtract the y's, over the change in x, so subtract the x's. 3 minus -2 is 3 plus 2, which is 5. -2 plus -1 is -3, so slope is -5/3. Okay? We can take that -5/3 and set it equal to, well, we still want to use the slope formula to write the equation of the line, right? That's what we've been doing before. We're back to the problems we were just doing. We need a slope, and we really only need 1 point. Remember, we want to leave that x and y in there so that we can solve for y. So instead of trying to plug in both points, just choose one, and it doesn't matter which one you choose. I'm going to choose that first point because the numbers are a little bit smaller and so therefore a little bit easier to work with. So you just plug it into the slope formula, just like you were doing before. Make that a plus. Now we cross multiply. 3 times y is 3y. 3 times 2 is 6. So we get -5x plus 5. So subtract 6. Then divide through by 3. There you go. Okay. So find the slope. Once you have the slope, choose one of the points, plug it into the slope formula, cross multiply, solve for y, boom, you've got your equation. Okay. Try it here for number 8. All right. You got to find the slope first. Now that you have the slope, you need to plug that into the slope formula along with one of the points, not both, just one. How about choosing that one? Because this makes things a whole lot easier. Right? Y minus 0 over x minus 0. Well, y minus 0 is just y. X minus 0 is just x. Now we cross multiply and get 5y equals 3x. Divide by 5 and you get y equals 3/5 x. The y-intercept is 0, so you don't see it there. But that's your equation of a line in slope-intercept form. Okay? Piece of cake, right? Try this one. Stop the video, start it back up, and see how you do. There you go, y equals -x plus 2. Okay? Lots of practice in this one. So, try this next guy, see what happens. Okay, so I'll walk you through this one really quick. Slope, change in y. So there's your x and y. Subtract 5 minus 3. When you do, you get -7 minus a -7, which becomes plus, which means you get 2 over 0, which means that your slope is undefined. And so like we said before, if your slope is undefined, when you go to put it back into the slope formula, just put a 1 over it. We'll put 1 over 0 to get your undefined slope. Okay, just to make the math a little easier. Now we cross multiply. 1 times x is x. 1 times 7 is 7. 0 times y minus 5 is just a big fat 0, nothing else. So we subtract 7. X is equal to 7, and we're done. Okay. Got another one here. Give it a shot. See how you do. You can stop the video, try it, and start it back up, and see if you're correct. Y equals -x plus 5 is what you should end up with, and that's how you get there. Okay. One more. Try one more. So they got y equals 3x plus 4. Okay, if you're not getting these, come in during STAR and sit with me and we'll walk through it a little bit more detail and get you to where you're doing them correctly. Okay? That's it. Homework's out in Canvas. Make sure you have it done next time.